Hey, what's up, guys? Corey Miceli here with the sexy Viking, Matthias Bergstrom Anderson. We're going to get right into the show. First topic of the day is, underdogs slash overachievers slash, the guys that make it to the top that people had counted out, or guys that kind of defied what nature, the world kind of had in their path and achieved anyway. I had a good conversation with a gentleman last night. A GOAT conversation, greatest of all time, and it kind of like morphed into like, what athletes were overachievers, what athletes like defied the odds, that sort of thing. And I always find those stories cool because there's certain, like, you look at Bo Jackson. Yeah, I'm not sure if you know who he is at all or not, Matthias, but shit, Bo Jackson played professional baseball, and then he only played like 2 years of college football, jumped right into the NFL, was just an absolute phenom athlete, played professional baseball and professional football, like immediately back-to-back seasons. So, like, as great of an athlete as Bo Jackson is, you certainly don't think we could call him an overachiever or an underdog because, the guy was just like an absolute phenom. Still one of my favorite athletes. The guy's just a phenomenal human being from what I can tell. But I don't want to talk about that type of athlete today. I'd like to talk about guys that kind of like, rose to the top, but on paper may not have looked like they were going to be those guys. So the first guy I'll talk about, believe it or not, who actually, in my opinion, is one of the greatest football players, regardless of position, regardless of era, of all time, is Jerry Rice. Now, Matthias, I know you don't know a whole lot about the American football,
He's
but
a
Jerry
football
Rice,
player, right?
football player,
Yeah,
wide receiver.
And
Yep,
he
yep.
is he the one I've heard about who had like such an intense training regimen that his coach refused to make the program public in case people would kill themselves over it?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I do know that his like off-season training was like instant. Like, he would start his off-season training like the day after the last game of the season, and he was like meticulous. Like, he didn't have like incredible speed, he did not have incredible size, but he was like, he would strive for such perfection on the routes that he would run, his like timing, his consistency, is just competitive, just a competitive nature and ability to just completely ball out every single play, every single game. I mean, the number of records he has is just astonishing. Like, something like 100 plus records in the NFL. Like, and I couldn't break them all down by any means, but the guy was just an absolute, complete example of, preparation, consistent discipline, consistent preparation, and just like performing at a consistent, amazing high level. So what I do know about Jerry Rice is this, which I think is kind of cool. Again, he had a good, strong father figure. His father was a bricklayer, a mason, and as a child, I remember in an interview with Jerry Rice, he'd talk about his job, helping his father with the jobs, and part of his job was catching bricks. And if you know, so that he says that absolutely unequivocally, like, helped develop like the real super fine, like, delicate motor skill he had with the ability to catch a football. So you catch a brick, your hands are like hard. Well, that brick's gonna like bruise the crap out of your hands. So you've got to really develop like strong hands, good dexterity, developing the motor skill, the coordination, etc. So I find that kind of interesting too, how Jerry Rice has told that story over and over and over, how that part of his job, catching those bricks, helped develop a very, very important skill set on the football field, which I've always kind of wondered, why don't other people just do that? I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The guy's hands, if you ever if you want to go to YouTube and just search Jerry Rice highlights, you'll see what I mean. But so on paper, I don't remember his exact, like, I believe he ran like a 40 time of like 4.7 seconds or something like that, which is, for a wide receiver, is nothing that impressive. I mean, still, for a normal human being, it's incredibly fast. But you look at Jerry Rice, didn't have an incredible physical stature. I don't remember his exact height and weight, but he was not real tall. He was not real fast. He had no like one athletic like attribute that you would measure at a combine or something like that seemed incredible. Yet he was the total package. And, like, in my opinion, I don't know if I could pick the greatest of all time football player, but he's in the conversation no matter who you are, because the guy was just an absolute freaking phenom on the field. The guys, my football people that are listening, you know exactly what I mean. And anyone that is not, go watch highlights. He's like poetry in motion. The dude was just absolutely fun to watch. And again, the consistency and the discipline that he brought to the game was so important, which kind of, I was talking to my sister, who was a phenomenal athlete herself. And when I had my D1 business as the head coach, a consistent message we would give to our athletes is how critical that how much more important your discipline and commitment is compared to your motivation. So we'll talk about that a little bit too, and I'll get back to the subject of some overachievers. But people that need to rely, I noticed the people that have to rely on motivation to get busy on whatever their goal is tend to be very inconsistent in their approach, because motivation is kind of fleeting. Some days we wake up and feel super motivated. Some days we're not. It's kind of a volatile emotion, if you will, to have to rely on. Whereas, discipline, consistency, and following through on what you have established for yourself as the necessary steps to achieve a goal far outweigh, motivation or lack of motivation. With that said, it's always, easier / better to go into a workout feeling highly motivated, but consistency, discipline, and intensity far outweigh like trying to capture the perfect motivational moment.
Well, I mean, actually, if you do something you don't feel like doing because deep down you want what you get from it, well, that's a sort of motivation as well.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Like,
I mean,
well, let me quote. I hope I don't butcher it. Remember, the Mike Tyson quote is what separates the champions, or the people that are willing to attack the things they don't like that are beneficial, just as hard as the things they do like that are beneficial.
yeah, and it's a higher level of discipline. It's a higher level of motivation, But for in layman's term, speaking in a way that everyone who listens can understand it, it's just easier to say that discipline and motivation aren't the same thing. But really, at the end of the day, they are. So
I mean, it's like, yeah. But I tell you what, my main times in my life when I've been the most disciplined, that motivation certainly flows a lot better. I know that much. If we give in to giving into laziness, or skipping some steps are important, it becomes, so it kind of creates a trend also. I'm just saying, relying on how you're feeling to determine whether you're going to do your task at hand or not is to me a flawed approach, because if you give into that, giving into that temptation of procrastinating, putting it to the side, whatever, will naturally weaken your motivation anyway. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because my sister and I were talking about that recently, and how that was a big part of the approach we used with many athletes over the years, right at the onset. And, easy to put on paper, easy to say. Then the nitty gritty is following through and actually putting it into action.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think with a lot of the information that's come out in recent years about how you have to ignore what your body is telling you about being tired or needing to recover because your body is lying to you and all that stuff. I mean, I think it's more important now than ever to remind people that you still have to feel good in a certain way. It has to be so that when you don't feel like doing something, when you feel down and out, whatever, you still kind of feel good. You still have that deep down. You have that drive to continue, because if you don't have that at all, your nervous system is shot. Maybe it's not even the best plan for you. So I mean, anyone who's trained for a number of years understands what I mean. That you can feel tired and still ready to go at it, and then you can feel tired and you're just dead. Everything sucks, So one way everything kind of sucks, but it kind of doesn't. And the other way, it just sucks. It's like you're ready to die. In a very way. Do you know what
I'll share? I do. Let me share another story with you. A personal friend of mine named LeVar Fisher, who ended up being a second-round draft choice, which was his childhood dream. Had a solid NFL career. But let's back up. LeVar grew up in an area of North Carolina, not too far from the area where I used to live as a child. We met much later in life, but LeVar, he's as he described himself, he was just a chubby little naive and kid that did not have a ton of confidence, but he did want to play in the NFL. He'd tell his father, he's like, "Hey, Pops, I want to play in the NFL." He's like, "All right, LeVar, well, we got to work hard." Well, we gave him good positive reinforcement. And I don't remember. I think he was a freshman in high school at this time, maybe a sophomore. That's not really important. The story goes as follows. LeVar made a statement in the locker room that he was going to play in the NFL. And he was ridiculed by the entire team. "Man, you fat little blah, blah, you ain't going to play in the NFL. You ain't even starting on this football team here. What gives you, So he was like completely like berated, attacked, he was made fun of. He just got beat down. He was bullied like crazy for just, making that claim. So he's like, "That's it. I quit. Football sucks, blah, blah, whatever." He's like in a big pity party. He went home and his dad could sense something was off. He's like, "LeVar, what's up, man?" He's like, "I hate football. I quit." He's like, "What do you mean you hate football? You quit?" And he told him the story. He said, "These guys tell me I suck and I'm never going to make the NFL." So his dad just listened to him, let him whine a little bit. And he said, "All right, LeVar, I want you to make a decision." He said, "You told me you wanted to play in the NFL. I said, if you worked hard enough and believed in it, you took the right steps, you could do it. And you agreed with me. So do you want to believe these kids at the school who do not love you, who do not care about you, and have no care in the world whether you make it or not? Or do you want to believe your own flesh and blood, your own father who cares about you, as long as the day is?" And something clicked in LeVar's head, and he just at that moment, for whatever reason, decided he was going to prove his father and himself right, and he was going to prove all these other guys wrong. So LeVar just went, something clicked. He went on a training mission. So according in his own words, he was, fat and chubby, way too fat for the position he wanted to play. So he just took matter to his own hands. He started just doing his extra sprint workouts and running, trying to eat a bit healthier, to the best of his ability. And lo and behold, like a year and a half later, he was all state / all American football player, because something clicked and he just made a commitment each and every day to do everything he could to be the best football player he could be. So I think it's a pretty cool story. And one of the coolest parts of LeVar's story is the first thing he did. His dad was a hardworking country guy. I forget, they had like 7 or 8 kids in the family. Dad worked 2 jobs, but just doing what he could to get by and being the best father he could. So the first thing LeVar did after he got drafted, he called the local real estate agent. There was this plot of land that LeVar's dad always liked. And he said, "Man, I'd love to have a house in that land someday," whatever. And the first step LeVar took after getting that big signing bonus was calling a realtor, calling a builder. And he built his dad that dream house, that piece of property. Oh, that's a pretty freaking cool story. So just figured I'd share that with you. And another side note is, a few months after he gets drafted, he's back in town. He's got, LeVar's pretty smart with his money too, side note. But he did splurge to get a nice new car and going to treat himself to a Burger King meal. Rolls up into Burger King. Who's waiting on him? The same guy that led that bully attack when he was a young kid. They tried making fun of him and feel like crap. So lo and behold, who's serving him his Whopper? That same Joker.
Yeah. I wonder if he ate that food though.
Oh, yes, he did. At this point, at this point, you're talking about, a 240-pound physical specimen that's, playing, he did. LeVar was a beast, man. I got a couple more. I will have him on as a guest one of these days. I'll let him tell the other stories. He does a better job of it anyway. A very funny story about making ESPN highlights, and it's not what you think. But anyway, it's enough about, enough football anecdotes, and I've got a few other stories I'd like to tell, but I know you had some questions you wanted to ask, specific to like strength and fitness training. So why don't we get into that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I've been curious about your world record training for, or close to world record training for squat and deadlift back in the day. When you were strongest. What was that? 6 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, like between, yeah, sure, 5. Yeah, between like maybe 2013 and 2018, that range. Sure. Yes.
Okay. So 4 years ago or 3. Okay. Well, you told me that you squatted once per week, and every third week was very light, just to help the recovery. Some technique work, maybe blood flow, feel good about it. You deadlifted once per week as well, and that was a sumo deadlift, so it was hard on the legs too. But did you do any other work? Because I mean, squats are harder for the legs than sumo deadlift. You would often do it from a block, which was like hard on the adductors, but maybe not as hard for the overall legs. So like, did you have a small workout in between for lunches or something like that?
Well, I mean, okay, good. I did a lot of like traditional exercises that like you would see like a bodybuilding approach or something like that. Not too frequently. I did like at the earlier part, I would use hamstring, just old fashioned hamstring curls when I was doing, when I was diligent in my training. I found that consistently doing some like light to medium weight, high rep hamstring curls, just for the benefit of really keeping the muscle like supple and like, the ability to contract and stretch and the blood flow by the nature of doing the exercise seemed to help quite a bit. But it wasn't like a grueling training like you would see maybe Ronnie Coleman do. It was just lightweight, getting a good contraction, a good stretch, just keeping the hamstring like feeling good was the goal. And then I would do a lot of like reverse hyper work at that time. If I'm not sure if listeners are familiar with what a reverse hyper machine is, it's like you're laying flat on a table with the crease of your hips, allowing your feet to go straight down towards the floor, and then you're extending your lower body, backwards or upright until your body becomes more or less a flat plane relative to the floor. Yeah. So I use reverse hypers frequently, and I did a big variety in methods of reverse hyper training. I would do some very lightweight, just like really squeezing the glutes to the top and getting a thorough stretch at the bottom. I would sometimes do like very, very heavy, more of like a swing method, just getting a bit of a squeeze at the top and really letting that lower back relax and expand and stretch at the bottom of the movement. And then I would do like, weights in between also. So and those I would do at time. I would just do those based on how my back felt and like as a consistent approach, just to keep like the lower back feeling good and keeping those glutes activated. Beyond that, are you familiar with what a TKE is? Like I think it's considered a terminal knee extension, where you're like standing with resistance around the back of your knee and then flexing your quadriceps to straighten your leg.
Oh yeah, so the band is pulling to bend your leg. You're standing and then you're flexing against it.
Yes.
For your lower quad, right? Your VMO.
Yep, that is correct. So I would do those like, there's no exact like methodology to when I would do those. I would just either utilize them as warm up. I was feeling a little bit beat up a day or two after a heavy day. I might do some just to get the blood flow going. But I did not really do anything like in the thick of the training. I did not really do any heavy movements besides just squatting. The other movements I would do was more like muscle activation, blood flow recovery, and maybe hip mobility work here and there also, but not an extreme amount of it. So that's what I did.
So the only thing you really did for your quads were that TKE, or did you do anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if you really consider that even directly. I guess technically it's for my quads, but it was really just like blood flow warm up. I really viewed it as more for my knees, which obviously your quads are doing some work. But yeah, correct. Now keep in mind, my background in training. I've done all kinds of stuff. I've done, like I think we talked in our previous episode, there's times I would do legs like 5 times a week. I've done like one of those Bulgarian split squats. I remember at one stage of my training, I was holding 140-pound dumbbells in each hand for my Bulgarian split squats. It was like the most I'd ever done.
How many reps with that?
Pardon me?
How many reps did you do with that?
Oh, I always kept my reps relative, even with that weight, probably like 8 to 12 in that range, something like that.
Yeah, 10 reps with almost 300 pounds. That's some rough shit.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I just thought, in the midst of my powerlifting training, I figured that was just too much wear and tear and too much extra like exertion, an extra thing to recover from that I don't think would have had a direct carryover my squat. I think it would just burn energy that wasn't necessary.
Why do you
Let me
think
add,
that was that it wouldn't have carried over? Because it seems there is a lot of people who see it one way and the other way. So what's your stance on it?
well, like you only have so many units of energy to put into action, and I just figured at that level, I wanted to specialize in squatting the most weight I possibly could. So at that point, I just figured it was detrimental, rather than supplemental.
Mm.
Again, considering I had decades of a training base too. So you might make an argument for a lifter at certain points in his career to include a lot of those accessory movements. But the other side of the coin, maybe not, because I've seen plenty of guys come up in the Franz training system that did very, very few accessory exercises, primarily squatted and focused on that technique. And they might mess with the tempo of squats, maybe some pause squats in the bottom, negatives, some partials here or there. But again, I really think if your goal is to build that really big squat, then you've got to do really big squats.
So I mean, did you feel after all that time that not only had you built up a lot of a lot of parts of your body that were pretty strong, that in many people they are pretty weak, but also that there are some wear and tear maybe that you had to limit your volume a little bit to keep going?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because keep in mind, how can I put this? Successful powerlifting is about energy compression. I mean, you're doing a lot more work, lifting more weight, and one rep is doing a lot more work in more or less the same amount of time. So just literally training your nervous system to get good at that high output at one time, albeit like multiple times in the course of a meet or the training day, is what powerlifting is all about. There's no escaping the fact that powerlifting is about maxing out. And the more successful, safe max out you can do that equate to a personal record, the stronger you'll become. There's every single top lifter in the course of time, they all have one thing in common. They're able to lift heavy weight for one rep effectively. So there's a few, obviously many ways to skin the cat, but there's no denying that on the platform, it's all about how much you can do for one rep. Again, very simple, but it's easy to lose sight of that when you go down the path of programming and attacking weak links and things of that nature. But in a perfect world, okay, do you know who John Hack is by chance?
Yeah, John Hack, yeah, the American hero guy.
No, he's a power lifter.
Yeah, but someone made a tribute video with that song about the American hero.
Got you. Okay. So if you listen to, I encourage anyone to go listen to some recent John Hack interviews and how he describes his training. It is so uncannily similar to the Franz approach. It blew my mind. So what's he doing? He's squatting heavy, deadlifting heavy, and benching heavy as frequently as possible, making PRs. His training is very, very, what most people would say, crude and basic, but it's obviously working.
Yeah, I mean, like with all that I've learned over the years and read and studied about my injuries and stuff like that, is that what I've found to be true, and then had to change a little bit because of my ego, was that first you have to learn the technique, the proper postures, all that stuff. Then you have to learn to become endurant, because if your posture breaks down with a heavy weight, you risk injury. Your posture is most typically improved by improving endurance, because you have to keep that posture over a long time, also when you're not in the gym. Makes sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely makes sense.
And then when you have a base, you know how to do it correctly for multiple reps. You know how to do some extra exercises for other muscle groups, other angles, whatever. Not necessarily a huge volume like bodybuilding training, but I mean, you can break a sweat and still keep the technique tight, Then
right.
you are ready to build strength, and then after a while you can get, you decide how you want to split it up. Like maybe you have a phase of high volume, a phase of medium volume, a phase of low volume, heavyweight, going heavier and heavier. Maybe you mix it up in the same week or in the same month, That's up to you, but you become more able to do it. And then what I found after a while is that if I try to build my endurance a lot, I end up wearing myself down. I have too much ego. I'm not ready for the actual heavy work. So I've actually last couple of years learned how to do less work. Sometimes I do a lot, sometimes I do too much, run myself to the ground, but it's for a little while. Rotate exercises, switch it up.
Let me add this to what you're saying. Anybody that's listening to this podcast that is a powerlifting fan knows who Eric Willybridge is. And if you don't know who Eric Willybridge is, one of the greatest powerlifters of all time. He was a phenom from age 18 all the way. Well, he still is a phenom, but he competed at a very, very high level for at least 10 years, and really changed the he basically made raw powerlifting what it is. Him and his family, and his training was very closely based on the Franz principles. They altered it a little bit just because as time goes on, you learn more things. But the vast majority of their competitive training was similar to what I've described. They had some accessory work they did, hamstrings, back, rear delts, etc. But the 90% of the time they spent in the weight room was squatting heavy, benching heavy, deadlifting heavy. So pause on that. I remember I was when we owned Barbell Central. It was a Sunday, and I was just catching up on some paperwork and doing some things. The gym was closed, and Eric had a key. They came and go as needed, and I didn't realize Eric had entered the gym. So I just hear some ruckus out on the floor. Didn't know what it was, and I look, and it's Eric doing a set of leg presses. Now, keep in mind, this is after a meet, like a time after about 6 meets in a row in a fairly time when he needed to kind of pull back and restart his training plan. So how did Eric restart his training plan? I look down, I see the guy doing some leg presses, and I don't know how many plates he had on there, a bunch. I don't know exactly how many reps he did, a bunch. Let's just say it was 10 plates each side for 20 reps or 25 reps or something like that. I didn't count. I just knew it was a lot of reps. So Eric had a circuit set up for himself where you go heavy leg presses, heavy seated rows, heavy high rep hamstring curls, and some other things too. I don't remember what exactly the other exercises were, but they were all very high rep, very heavy weight, done in back to back to back fashion. If anyone knows anything about PHA training, it kind of reminded me of that. He had his own rhyme or reason for doing it, and obviously there's no arguing with it because he's still the all-time world record holder for the 308 broadcast. So the point being, if you going back to you only have so much, you only have so many units of energy you can dedicate into your training. So you look at Eric, a world-class phenom strength pro. He's doing by and large heavy one rep training as a powerlifting athlete. When he wasn't, he didn't at the time. Let's say he had no necessarily meet picked out or a peak performance time picked out. He was resetting the bar. That's the time and place to mix it up and do a bunch of different things. Where you work on some weaknesses, do some bodybuilding style movements. So again, that training worked for him at the time because he did not have to dedicate a lot of energy into that real high one rep powerlifting style training. So I don't know if that makes sense based on what you were saying, but hopefully it does.
Yeah, it's there's a time to try different things, learn what feels good, learn what hits the right spot, and then there's a time to take the exercises you felt most beat up from and focus on them and not have too much energy left, of course, after those hard sets to do too many exercises. So you have to kind of switch them from week to week or month to month,
Yeah, you got it. A lot of people.
By the way, we have just so you know, we have 1 minute left. By the way.
Okay. Yeah. Well, appreciate you tuning in. We got please questions or comments. Please hit us up. My direct cell phone number is 360-939-7652. Really appreciate you tuning in. Remember, Rap Fiend Radio continues to play when this show is over. Old school beats, new stuff, independent artists, and hit me up. You got questions or comments? 360-939-7652. Much love to everybody. Matthias, you got anything to say?
Hit me up on my profile. We'll probably get a link on the website when we get that up running, or search for Dane Training on Facebook if you want coaching.
Sounds good, brother. All right. Everybody out there, different times, places, dimensions, and things of that nature. We will talk to you soon. Peace.
Peace.